There comes a moment when the empath no longer feels, not because they've turned cold, but because they've absorbed too much. The world's pain seeps into their bones until their own voice goes silent. It's not apathy, it's exhaustion disguised as stillness. After years of being the healer, the listener, the emotional sanctuary, something inside them breaks, gently, almost mercifully. Carl Jung called this enantiodromia, the law of reversal, where what has been lived to its extreme must eventually become its opposite. The empath's light collapses inward, and for the first time, they stop reaching outward. They step away from noise, from need, from saving. And in that quiet void, a strange clarity begins to form. Not the empathy of compassion, but the empathy of awareness. Burnout becomes initiation. The collapse becomes transformation. The empath, once a vessel of others, now faces their own soul like a mirror they can no longer look away from. This is not the end of feeling. It is the rebirth of perception. If you've ever felt emptied by caring too deeply, write in the comments below, "I descend to rise." Number 2, the descent. When the empath finally stops running toward the cries of others, they are left standing in a silence that feels like death. The world they once held together with love and listening begins to fall apart, revealing what was hidden beneath all along, the trembling architecture of their own soul. Jung called this the descent into the unconscious, the necessary fall before the ascent. It is not a punishment, but a pilgrimage into the labyrinth of one's inner world. The empath, stripped of identity and purpose, begins to wander through the wasteland of their psyche. Every emotion they've ever absorbed from others, grief, rage, fear, despair, returns not as memories but as archetypes wearing masks. The abandoned child, the silent mother, the betrayed healer, the shadow twin. Each one demands to be seen, not saved. Each one whispers, "You cannot heal what you refuse to feel." This descent is not poetic, it's brutal. It burns away illusions of goodness and selflessness until the empath faces the raw truth. They did not only want to help others, they wanted to be needed. Their kindness was currency. Their sensitivity was control, disguised as care. To meet the shadow is to admit this, to look at the face of manipulation hiding behind compassion and say, "Yes, you are also me." Jung believed this confrontation with the shadow was the key to individuation, becoming whole rather than holy. The empath's descent is therefore not about losing light, but retrieving what was exiled to the dark. In the black soil of burnout, they discover the seeds of true power, discernment, boundaries, and emotional sovereignty. Down here, empathy transforms. It no longer bends toward pain, it stands beside it. It no longer absorbs, it witnesses. The empath becomes a mirror, not a sponge, one who reflects truth without drowning in it. This is the hidden initiation no one speaks of, the sacred fall that teaches the sensitive to wield their depth like a blade instead of a wound. If you feel yourself falling, don't resist. You're not breaking. You're becoming. Comment below, "I walk through my shadow." Number 3, the shadow's mirror. In the dim corridors of the inner world, the empath begins to see what they were never meant to see, the mirror that doesn't flatter, the reflection that doesn't lie. Jung said that everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in conscious life, the darker and denser it becomes. For the empath, that shadow is not cruelty or indifference. It's power, the power they've disowned in the name of kindness, the fire they've hidden behind understanding. When they look into the mirror, they realize that beneath their endless compassion lies rage, ancient, intelligent rage, the part of them that has been watching all along, waiting for permission to exist. The empath who once feared anger now recognizes it as divine truth. Anger is not destruction. It's a boundary that was never spoken. Beneath that, there's pride, the kind that says, "My heart is sacred ground, not public property." Beneath that, there's desire, the raw, unfiltered hunger to live not for others, but for the self. The mirror shows all of it. The empath trembles. For years, they believed goodness meant erasing themselves. But the mirror shows something different, that real empathy is not martyrdom. It's awareness balanced with instinct. It's the serpent and the dove entwined. The shadow whispers, "You were never meant to be light alone." And so, the empath learns to see with both eyes, one that feels, one that discerns. This dual vision is what Jung called the union of opposites, the moment consciousness embraces what it once denied. The empath who integrates their shadow becomes something new, not a rescuer, but a revealer. They no longer absorb pain to feel worthy. They illuminate pain to make it conscious. Every interaction becomes a mirror in motion. Every emotion becomes data, not destiny. The world senses the shift. This empath no longer leaks energy, they radiate it. They have become the mirror itself, calm, reflective, untouchable, yet profoundly alive. The shadow is no longer the enemy. It is the missing heartbeat of the soul. Comment below if you feel it rising within you. I am the mirror and the flame. Number 4, the alchemy of power. Something remarkable happens after the mirror shatters. The empath, once defined by fragility, begins to feel the pulse of something raw, an electric, grounded authority that rises not from ego, but from integration. Jung believed that transformation is born from tension, the tension between opposites, between what we show and what we hide. That friction, when endured, creates psychic gold. The empath who once scattered their light across others now learns the art of containment. They become a crucible, the vessel that holds fire without being consumed. This is the alchemy of power, when compassion meets shadow, when emotion meets awareness, when feeling evolves into knowing. The empath is no longer ruled by the moods of others. They read them like symbols, like the language of dreams. They sense projection, manipulation, and hunger not as threats, but as reflections of their own once lost fragments. Every energy they once absorbed now becomes a teacher. Every wound becomes a sigil of wisdom. In this stage, their sensitivity transforms from curse to compass. They can walk into a storm and feel the wind without losing their center. They can witness suffering without dissolving in it. Their empathy is no longer submission, it's sovereignty cloaked in stillness. Jung called this the path of individuation, to become who you truly are, stripped of the borrowed masks. The empath's alchemy is not about becoming less sensitive, but becoming conscious of sensitivity's source. The power they unlock is subtle, quiet, immense. The ability to sense truth beneath words, energy beneath intention, soul beneath persona. The world begins to feel their presence differently. They do not speak loudly, yet their silence commands attention. They do not seek validation, yet their authenticity magnetizes respect. This is the hidden power Jung hinted at, but never named. The empath's transformation into the alchemist of emotion, the one who transmutes energy instead of absorbing it. They carry both shadow and light within them, balanced, integrated, awake. No longer drained, they radiate. No longer wounded, they heal through being. And as they stand in this new equilibrium, the world begins to change around them, quietly, irrevocably. If you feel this awakening stirring inside you, comment below. I turn pain into gold. Number 5, the rebirth of boundaries. After the alchemy, the empath learns the sacred geometry of limits, boundaries, not as walls, but as architecture for the soul. Jung said that wholeness is not achieved by cutting off parts of the self, but by integrating them into a living design. Boundaries are the design. They are the lines through which energy flows, the invisible frame that gives meaning to compassion. Before burnout, the empath's love was formless, an ocean without shores, spilling into every wound it found. But the reborn empath understands that even the ocean needs a coastline to sing against. Boundaries are not rejection, they are rhythm. They are the point where I meets you without losing itself. In this realization, the empath rediscovers the self as sacred territory, one that requires tending, protection, and reverence. This is not selfishness, it's sacred responsibility. Jung would have called it individuation made visible, the soul declaring, I exist as a distinct constellation. Every no becomes a yes to authenticity. Every distance becomes devotion to alignment. The empath learns that compassion without boundaries is chaos dressed as kindness. True empathy requires containment, to feel deeply without drowning, to listen without dissolving, to hold space without becoming the space itself. Boundaries become their new language, each one carved from experience, pain, and discernment. They no longer apologize for the gates they've built. They bless them. They no longer feel guilty for choosing solitude. They honor it as sanctuary. And when they re-enter the world, people feel it. That quiet strength, that unmistakable edge of someone who has walked through their own fire and returned carrying both softness and steel. Their energy no longer leaks, it circulates. Their empathy no longer drains, it directs. They are no longer open to everything. They are open to what resonates. The empath has become the guardian of their own inner temple, knowing that the truest love begins within its walls. If this truth echoes through you now, write in the comments below. My boundaries are my power. Number 6, the archetype of the phoenix. From the ashes of burnout, the empath rises, not as the person they were, but as the symbol of everything they were meant to become. Jung believed that every psyche holds within it an archetype of rebirth, the eternal cycle of death and renewal that echoes through every myth. For the empath, this archetype takes the form of the phoenix, the bird that burns so completely it becomes the fire itself. When empathy collapses under the weight of the world, when its wings are charred by overextension and sorrow, something magnificent awakens in the ruins. The empath realizes that the destruction was never a punishment. It was initiation. The flames were the purification of illusion, consuming every false identity they carried. The savior, the caretaker, the martyr. All the roles they played to earn belonging are reduced to smoke, leaving behind the core, the self, unbound and radiant. In this rebirth, the empath does not seek to return to who they were. That self no longer exists. They emerge with eyes that see beyond surface kindness, beyond the soft manipulations of victimhood, beyond the seduction of saving others to avoid saving themselves. They no longer rise for validation, but for vision. The Phoenix empath embodies paradox. Soft yet unyielding, compassionate yet fiercely self-protective, luminous yet born from darkness. Their energy feels different now. It doesn't reach outward, it emanates. They no longer try to heal others. They inspire others to heal themselves simply by being whole. Jung would call this transformation an encounter with the self, the union of all opposites, the embodiment of psychic totality. To rise as the phoenix is to remember that fire was always your nature. The same sensitivity that once burned you is now the flame that lights your path. You are no longer afraid of destruction because you've seen what it creates. This is the hidden power of the empath, not endless giving, but eternal renewal. If your soul has burned and you are ready to rise from your own ashes, comment below, I am the fire that rebuilds. Number 7, the silent authority. When the phoenix dust settles, the empath discovers something unexpected. Silence has become their new language. Not the silence of withdrawal or defeat, but the silence of presence, an authority that doesn't need to shout to be felt. Jung spoke of the mana personality, the figure who has integrated enough of the unconscious to exude a quiet, almost mystical influence. The evolved empath now embodies this. They no longer persuade, they emanate. Their energy carries the weight of someone who has walked through their own darkness and returned fluent in the language of both shadow and soul. They have learned that true power is not about control, but about coherence. When their inner world aligns, the outer world responds. People sense it, that still, grounded frequency, the aura of someone who no longer reacts but observes, who no longer chases understanding but embodies it. This is silent authority, power without noise, strength without spectacle. In this state, the empath's former tendencies, over-explaining, over-helping, over-feeling, dissolve like mist in sunlight. They've realized that their energy speaks more honestly than their words ever could. Their boundaries no longer need defending, they are simply known. They become the archetype of the sage blended with the warrior. soft wisdom sharpened by experience. The world tries to draw them back into chaos, but they've learned the sacred art of stillness. Jung described individuation as a spiraling process, always returning, yet never the same. The empath's silence is the proof of that spiral. It is not emptiness, it is mastery. When they enter a room, the air changes, not from dominance, but resonance. Their eyes no longer seek approval, they witness truth. Their voice, when it finally speaks, lands like an oracle's whisper, measured, grounded, undeniable. The empath has become the calm in the storm, the anchor in the emotional sea. They no longer absorb energy, they shape it. This is their hidden inheritance, influence without effort, depth without drama. If this transformation stirs within you, leave your mark below. My silence commands. Number 8. The sacred solitude. After the rise and the silence, the empath enters a new realm, solitude, not as exile, but as initiation. Jung said that loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate what matters most. For the awakened empath, solitude is not an absence of connection, it is the restoration of it. They retreat not from the world, but into their own depth, the still lake beneath all surface waves. Here, there are no demands, no emotional noise, no performances of care, only truth. The empath finally breathes without carrying the atmosphere of others. In this sacred isolation, they begin to hear the voice of the self clearly, the one that was drowned out by constant empathy, endless giving, and the ceaseless hum of other people's emotions. They realize that solitude is the soul's natural climate, the space where intuition sharpens and perception deepens. This solitude is not loneliness, it's sovereignty. It is where the empath rediscovers their own frequency after years of distortion. In Jungian terms, it is the meeting of the ego and the self, the alignment that gives birth to authentic guidance. The empath begins to feel life again, but from within, not through borrowed pain or reflected moods. The world starts to look different, sharper yet softer. They see patterns in people, symbols in dreams, meaning in stillness. Every quiet moment becomes a dialogue with the unconscious, every breath a descent and return. This is the phase where creativity blooms like wildflowers through ash. The empath becomes the artist of their own psyche, painting with emotion but guided by awareness. They learn that solitude is the container where wisdom ferments and matures into vision. In this state, they no longer fear being misunderstood because they no longer seek understanding from others. Their solitude becomes a sacred garden, guarded by silence, nourished by peace, lit by inner fire. From this ground, all true intuition grows. The empath has not escaped the world. They have finally re-entered it through the back door of stillness. If this resonates with your soul's rhythm, write in the comments below, "My solitude is sacred." Number 9. The empath's awakening gift. From the silence of solitude, the empath's final gift begins to unfold. Not a gift of feeling for others, but of perceiving truth itself. Jung taught that the psyche seeks wholeness, not perfection. And now the empath understands why. Their pain was never punishment, it was preparation. The exhaustion, the heartbreak, the disillusionment, all of it carved their perception into a lens that sees beyond surface stories. They begin to sense patterns in people's words, motives hidden beneath smiles, energy that speaks louder than sound. This new sensitivity isn't fragile, it's forensic. They no longer mistake empathy for absorption, nor compassion for self-erasure. They've learned to listen to what is not said, the silence between words, the pause that reveals truth. Jung would say they've made contact with the archetype of the seer, the inner sage who translates symbols into understanding. This is the empath's awakening gift, the ability to feel reality without being ruled by it. Their intuition becomes almost prophetic, but not mystical in the way of escape. It is rooted in observation, born of suffering, transmuted into insight. They can look at a situation and sense what the soul beneath it is trying to express. Every betrayal, every disappointment, every loss they once endured now serves as data in their emotional language. They don't guess anymore. They know. Their heart and mind finally work as one. Logic guided by empathy, empathy grounded by reason. They see how energy moves through conversations, how truth hides inside contradictions, how people project what they refuse to own. Yet they judge none of it because they've met all of it within themselves. This gift isn't about power over others, it's clarity within. It allows them to walk through chaos untouched, to offer wisdom without losing balance, to connect deeply without dissolving. The awakened empath becomes the quiet oracle, grounded, compassionate, discerning. The world may call it intuition. Jung would call it individuation achieved. If you feel this awakening stirring in your bones, if your perception has become your power, comment below, I see through the veil. Number 10. The return to the world. When the empath returns from the depths, they are no longer who they were. The world that once overwhelmed them now feels smaller, quieter, as if reality itself has softened in recognition of their transformation. Jung wrote that no one becomes illuminated by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The empath has done exactly that. They have walked through their own abyss, made peace with shadow, and emerged luminous, not from escaping pain, but from embodying it. Their energy moves differently now. It's grounded, measured, magnetic. They do not absorb the room. They balance it. They do not fix others. They awaken them. This is the completion of the cycle, the hero's return, the alchemist reborn as sage. They now live with an effortless wisdom, an unshakable calm born of knowing that every fall was a sacred design. Their empathy has matured into presence, their intuition into vision, their pain into power. They are no longer merely feeling the world, they are shaping it. To those still burning, still falling, still searching, the empath's voice becomes a lantern in the dark. If you've walked this path or feel its echo calling you home, comment below, I have returned from the fire. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your journey into the shadow self has only just begun.